Welcome to Who's There, our continuing exploration of what is within you, your motivations, aspirations, your capabilities, and how you define rewards in your life that can inform your organization's leaders for better outcomes. Good morning, Robert. Good to catch up. And, we had our successful first real issue with Todd Cherches as our guest or victim, depending on how we want to talk about it. I thought it went pretty well, and that, we'll be tacking that on to the end of this introduction so that people can take a listen to that interview. And I learned a good bit from it, and I thought maybe you could give your take on, what you think that people that listen to that interview, listen to our conversation might take away from it.
Yeah, sure. And, I've known Todd for some years now, and it's been exciting to watch his work evolve, and particularly with the launch of his book, VisuaLeadership, which is getting some due recognition in the business community around his thoughts on helping leaders use visuals in communication and engagement with people. He brought a flurry of ideas around our theme, which is how do we ignite the fire in individuals, and how does that help organizational leaders see what's around them? And that's exactly what we're trying to do in this conversation. Todd talked quite a bit about, and I had zoned in on it initially anyway. I was going to bring it up if he didn't, which is his passion skills matrix. And it's just a simple 4 quadrants of where a person is in their work, what they're thinking, and working towards the sweet spot of where they want to be as an individual to grow and learn and produce. And he went right to it, so I didn't even have to cue him up for that. But that sweet spot, I love that term because it really speaks to your own happiness, I think. What have you learned to put aside, and what have you learned to focus on in your work and your life to move on your journey? And I think that probably is the most relevant part of his book to what we're trying to talk about.
Cool. Yeah. I always find the conversations interesting with folks like Todd or even you, because although you and I share a lot in common on the creative side, my career or corporate path has been non-traditional, to say the least. And so I think oftentimes I'm approaching things with a view. I don't want to call it outsider view. I don't think that really encapsulates it, but it's kind of a different view. And so getting real insights from people that really understand that corporate world and how things work, I always find that beneficial and verge of fascinating sometimes. But so I think there was a lot of really good insight in our conversation, and I thought that was a good first episode.
It occurred to me just like this moment. I talk a lot about my being a father with my young 20-something kids and the coaching I give them, and I realized that maybe that's another part of our conversation, is that an individual really benefits from having a coach who understands the intricacies of your own interest against what you're trying to do safely in your organization. And having someone guide you on what is allowable to talk about. And the coach could be within an organization or it could be outside. And I think that the idea for giving someone confidence and comfort that their total interest is important and they can pursue it, and find ways to knock down the barriers for that. And that's something else I think we might want to explore in our conversation.
Yeah. I will say I've been told by more than one person in my life that I can be too transparent or worse. So, always good to keep that in mind. But, I hope people really get some good takeaways from the conversation. The next episode. Really exciting. Of course, Enrique Rubio from Hacking HR will be joining us. I think it might be good. We had talked about maybe picking up a news story that we could chat about in these kind of intros. Maybe we can do that with the next intro, next episode. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what folks say about our talk with Todd, and really looking forward to talking with Enrique next. So this has been a lot of fun already and a good journey, and big benefit for me. So I appreciate you connecting and working with me on this, and seeing where we can take it from here.
Well, we're off to a great start. That's not only a great start, but we are. I think we're both looking forward to the coming conversations with a range of people, and hopefully very, very representative people from all viewpoints, and to feed what we're trying to think about. So well done, Kurt. Let's keep going.
Cool. Well, we'll take this and jump into our conversation. You're Robert Schott. I'm Kurt Meinhold, in a conversation with Todd Cherches.
Todd, we really appreciate you joining us to talk about our theme, Who's There?
It's my pleasure.
The basis of it is that we want to explore the who's there in terms of who's within us. Who am I? What am I looking for in my life? How do I pull that out and move in the direction for my own life's journey to realize great things from it? But then the workforce leaders may have the same question, like who's there? Who's out there that we don't really know very well? And it's that intersection of revealing what we're each individually interested in, and how organizations, leaders can know what they have at their fingertips. So we know that with your work, particularly in regard to how you capsulize it in your new book, Visual Leadership, we wanted to ask you, your viewpoint, our theme, but also, where you're coming from with it. But let me just first ask you to share some of the good news you've had in recent days, and a few things that you have going.
Yeah, well, the news just from today, literally from 1 hour ago, I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn or Facebook, but my book was just picked by the Thinkers 360 organization as one of the top 50 business books of the year to read in 2021. So that literally just happened in about an hour ago. So that was a nice surprise, came out of nowhere. So that was kind of cool.
Well, I did see that, and I was really, again, happy for you. Every time you post on LinkedIn, you've got some explosively great news. And I have referred to the book Visual Leadership, which you could see it lined up on the wall back there. Tell us briefly about that.
Yeah, I'm opening up my own Barnes & Noble since they're closing down. I figured I'd open up my own branch in my house. So basically, Visual Leadership, it was about 10 years in the making. One of the things, just to backtrack, I've always been a business, not always, but I had so many bad managers in my life that I just started reading management leadership books, figuring out how to be a better way to manage, lead, motivate people than the way I had been managed or bossed around, for a better term, throughout most of my career. So I started reading one business book after another way back in 1998, and I would read anywhere from 3 to 5 a week. I was working for a management training company at the time. So I averaged one a week over 20 years from 1998 to 2018, which when I added it up, came out to over 1,000 business books that I had read over those 20 years. So after reading all of them and quoting them and basically jotting down my own thoughts, people kept saying to me, when are you going to write your book? So I finally, after working on it for years, we know each other from the leadership forum at Silver Bay. And when I was there a few years ago, I met Rob Salafia, whose book, Leading from Your Best Self, is right over my shoulder. And he introduced me to his agent. His agent signed me and got me a book deal with Post Hill Press, Simon & Schuster. And that's how I got my book published. And it just came out in May. So what someone said to me, Brian Mattamore, who I actually also met at Silver Bay, he once said to me, you're going to be talking about your book until you actually get a deadline. Once you get a deadline and you have to deliver it, then you can stop talking about it and write it. And that's what actually happened to me. From the time I signed the book deal, I had 9 months to get the publisher a first draft. So I literally locked myself away in this office all of last summer for 3-4 months straight and just wrote around the clock.
And just for our listeners and viewers, Visual Leadership is a host of brief chapters using different types of visualization techniques in how you present information to get a message across, whether it be through metaphors or drawings or graphics or charts. And each chapter is really consumable, followed with some great summary points and action points to take. So it's really rich in all of that. Maybe I'll just start off with a question here, and then we'll mix it up with Yumi and Kurt. I have a kind of a burning question. Does every individual have that inner flame that can be fanned into a fiery passion, through their own workplace, perhaps?
Well, I was talking about 2 P's, passion and purpose. Passion is that fire within you, that desire, basically. And purpose is, why do you do what you do, right? So we've all had jobs in our careers that just paid the bills, right? We were just lucky to have them. I've had some really bad jobs in my career. I've had temp jobs. I've had horrible bosses where people say, why don't you just quit? And sometimes we work just because we need the money. We need the paycheck. In an ideal world, you want to do something that you have a passion for, and it gives you a sense of purpose. And as you were talking about that fiery flame, there's a saying for managers, don't light a fire under people, light a fire within them, right? So that's one of the things that leaders do. If you talk to people, if you listen, if you find out what are their interests, what are their passions, then you can help them ignite that flame into that fire that you're talking about. But if we don't listen, if we don't find out who our people are, then we're never going to know. We're going to make assumptions. And one of the models of my book, the Passion Skill Matrix, really dives into that. What are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? And the sweet spot is when your passions and your skills are in alignment.
I'm sort of interested in your take on, if we look at where we are today, and we look at where we want to be a year, 3 years, 5 years down the road, what are the leadership qualities we see? What are the, I guess, the values, the vision that are necessary in leadership to actually embrace these types of changes that we're going to need and actually implement them?
Yeah, there's so many answers to that question because there's so much complexity to it. One of the models in my book is my hierarchy of followership. How likely is someone to follow you? It's nice if they like you and admire you, but it's even more important that they respect you and they trust you. So it really starts with trust from a leadership perspective, trusting your people. I remember years ago, they did in the NFL, they did a survey of players and asked them how much did they trust their head coach. And what they found was, the ones who trusted their head coach, the number one reason why was that they felt that their head coach trusted them. So that was like a really eye-opening thing. It's like, you're not going to get other people's trust if you don't trust them, if you don't make them feel trust, if you are not trustworthy. So there's a whole book called The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey's son, the son of the guy who wrote 7 Habits. So it starts with trust. It starts with core values. It's about listening. It's about having a vision that is, I always talk about from a visual leadership perspective, it's 2 parts. One is having a vision and formulating that vision. The other part is communicating that vision in a clear, compelling, and inspiring way. So if you want to get people on board with your vision, you have to make your vision their vision. They have to be in alignment. Because if people don't see it, then they're not acting with a sense of purpose. They're just carrying out tasks, right? And there's that famous story about 2 bricklayers. Yes, one, what he's doing, he says, I'm laying bricks, and the other one says, I'm building a cathedral or a hospital or a school, right? They're both laying bricks, but one has a sense of purpose and is going around their daily work, going about it with a sense of passion. I think that's what leaders need to do, is find out what makes people tick. In my NYU class, one of the questions I asked my students in session 1, and I co-teach that class with Jeff Schwartzman, who's also a member of the Leadership Forum community, what keeps you up at night and what gets you out of bed in the morning? right? So what are the things that you worry about before you're going to sleep? And what are the things that make you want to jump out of the bed and embrace the day? And those are just some of the things that leaders should find out about their people so they can know what their worries and concerns are, but also what are they excited about? What's going to inspire them?
Yeah, I wonder, so this is, I don't know if this is something you can speak to or not. For me, one of the challenges, I think I'm maybe the youngest person on the call. I'm almost 50. But one of the things I've seen throughout my career is kind of this real separation between the organization and the benefits it provides to its employees. It's almost become a situation where you've got human resources within an organization, right? Those resources are there to serve the organization, which is perfectly fine. But just my experience, the organization has lost its way with regard to being a resource for those humans. Mm-hmm. And one of the big challenges that I've seen is how do we get away from, particularly in America, we see this in other parts of the world, but particularly in America, that short-term quarterly reports mentality to something that is longer term and actually can provide real sustainability from a benefit and revenue standpoint for organizations by investing in those people and letting those people that are work there, that community, actually use that organization as a resource.
Yeah, one of the hot topics in the business world for years has been employee engagement, right? And now employee experience is the catchword now. But it's like, what are you doing to set your employees up for success, to make sure they're happy in terms of attracting talent, retaining talent, motivating talent? There was the pre-COVID world, the COVID world, and the post-COVID world that's going to be coming up. The world has changed. So that old school, I'm a baby boomer, as I think we all are, or I'm on the cusp of boomer, Gen Xer, but things have changed. Millennials want something different. So if you say, if you work really hard in 25 years, you'll have that corner office. They don't care about the corner office. They're fine working from the Starbucks, or I have a corner office right now. I'm in the corner of my office in my home, in my apartment, right? So people, the whole idea of work going from the mailroom to the corner office. First of all, there is no mailroom anymore because there's no mail. It's all, and there's no email room as far as I know. But the whole that dangling carrot of someday you'll get a gold watch and after you have your years in a corner office, that's no longer motivating, right? So it's like, what will motivate people? What is the total rewards? What is going to get people up in the morning and get them to stay with your company? Because think about, it's hard to find talent, then you get them on board and then you train them and they can walk out the door and work for a competitor for $2 more an hour unless you give them some compelling reason to keep them, right? So that's some of the things. And how do you know what motivates people? Because there is no one-size-fits-all motivator or solution or compensation plan, right? So I think that's one of your themes is how do you motivate that individual and think about each person and treat them as an individual, not as part of a collective.
So Todd, I reflect on my life and I've made some breakout moves later stage career to build a different journey in where I'm going and it continuing to evolve. I don't see any end in sight, and I'm very excited about it all. But as a parent of 3 20-somethings, I've had the lucky opportunity to be a coach and share what I think I did probably unwisely through parts of my career of just falling into the next job that was offered to me. And I think a lot of people get pigeonholed. You come out of college, you just need to get the job. And suddenly it isn't really aligning with where maybe you had set out as a purpose a few years before. But you then become good at it and you're needed and it accelerates into something else that maybe brings you further away from where you wanted to be. So it's a really hard one because you continually want to be rewarded with work you're doing. And that's a premise of a lot of my thinking in this past half year is, what is it that I'm getting rewarded in my life for? Not just the total rewards package from my employer. I think we did have a breakthrough with my oldest. He's now turning 30 and had been working in the HVAC world designing handles for boxes. And that was where it started. He said, oh, I don't want to do 40 years of this. Yeah. But the latest opportunity he got, they were yelling at him for saying he works in HVAC. No, man, you're into energy. You're an energy design guy. You're an energy analyst. Think about the bigger picture. And if the light bulbs went on, yeah, that it all is coming together now.
Yeah.
But it did take some push, some outside influence to help him realize that.
Yeah. No one's, it's always interesting when I ask people, I always love origin stories. I love word origins. I love superhero origin stories. I always like knowing, how did you start and how did you end up where you are, right? In the HR field, very often we talk about a career path as if it's some laid out like stepping stones through a park, right? It's not a path, it's a roller coaster of ups and downs, twists and turns, exhilarating highs and terrifying plummets. We've all had those. I've had jobs I loved and jobs I've hated. I've lost jobs I loved because of getting laid off, and I was fired a couple of times. So I've had numerous careers. My dream, I talk about it in my TED Talk, was, when I was a kid, I wanted to be Superman, and my backup plan was to be Batman. So those were my two career goals. Short of that, maybe I would work in the TV industry. So I strove to work in Hollywood, and I moved out to LA, and I was out there for 10 years, and I had some amazing experiences. I worked for Aaron Spelling. I worked for Michael Nesmith of the Monkees. I worked for Aaron Spelling. I worked in casting at Columbia Pictures, comedy at Disney, and drama at CBS. So I had some amazing experiences out there, but the values of that industry were not consistent with who I was. And I kind of hit a brick wall, and I went and got a job as a project manager in the theme park business that sent me to China. That was a transformational experience. I talk about that in my TED Talk in my book. So, and that's where the visual thinking thing got triggered, when I had to communicate in China by drawing pictures because I didn't speak the language. But yeah, we're not on like one linear career path. So I'm sure your son, who's 30, is going to have five other careers before he retires, and same thing with your other kids as well. So I think it's actually freeing to know that, what we're doing today, I'll learn from it, I'll do my best job, and but then you move on to the next thing. So what millennials want is very different from what baby boomers wanted: job security. We wanted, all these things that millennials don't even care about. So it takes different ways to motivate, inspire, and retain talent in this day and age, where people could just literally walk out the door and take their intellectual capital with them.
One of the things I've noticed, and you talk with more, heads of organizations than I do. So maybe you have a different take, but one of the challenges I've noticed as I've moved through my career, and to touch quickly on what you said, I don't really see my career as this kind of path. I've done a whole bunch of different things, some related, some not. But at the beginning of my career, I worked so many jobs where the organization was willing to train me. There was almost nothing, and I can say this, I think honestly, but almost nothing that came out of schooling beyond basic math and spelling and reading that directly related to almost any work that I've done for an organization. It's almost all been peer-to-peer or on the job learning and growing and training. But I see more and more organizations that aren't going down that path. They aren't taking people in and saying, hey, this person is trustworthy, showed that they've delivered before, but they don't know how to use, a specific programming language, but we think they can learn it quickly and get up to speed. That kind of specialization, I think, is becoming a hurdle to growth and happiness at work for a lot of people. So instead of taking somebody who has an interest in something and then getting them up to speed, we just go out and hire somebody who's already got, experience there. So are you seeing, is there a shift that's happening? Am I wrong? Or is my experience an outlier? I'm just curious kind of your take on that.
Yeah, the rate of change is exponential. So there's no time to train people. There's no time for companies to invest in someone 12 months or 18 months to get them up to speed. In some fields, yes. If you're on law school track or a medical or something, there are certain tracks that you're on, and but you kind of get on the train and they take you there to the next level. It's apprenticeship models and learning. But in most organizations, one of the phrases, the expressions out there is we live in a VUCA world, VUCA. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? And it is. Now I say we're living in a hyper VUCA world because we've been talking about the quote hashtag future of work for years, right? The future of work is here. In fact, it's already, the train's left the station in terms of, COVID has expedited everything from work from home, flexibility, adaptability, agility, all of those words. So one of the things I talked about the other day, and I talk about in my book, is the opposite of VUCA. I call it CCSC. The opposite of when things are volatile, as a leader, you need to calm things down. When things are uncertain, you need to find some certainty and create some certainty. When things are complex, you need to try to find a way to simplify. And when things are ambiguous, you need to find some clarity, right? So you need to kind of slow it down and get a grip and see what's happening. But then you need to move on. You need to make decisions and you need to act. You don't have 6 months or a year to slowly roll out a plan. So, and same thing with training people. So, Kurt, I think you're right. It's like, you can either do, I've seen people get fired after a week. Sorry, you can't do the job. There's no learning curve. There's no, we'll invest in you and see how so people are in some ways short-sighted because you could have a good, talent. One of the stories I write about in my book is years ago when I worked for Disney, I was a temp. And I was temping in the PR department, and they needed someone to edit a press release. And all the PR people were out of the conference. And the head of the department was frantically running around with this press release. I need someone to proofread and edit this. And I was like, I'll do it. I'll take a shot at it. My job was to file and answer phones. She said, you're just a temp. What do you know? And I said, well, I have a bachelor's degree in English literature, and I have a master's degree in communication. I think I could at least proofread it. And, so she left it on my desk, and she said, just give it to the first PR person who comes back from lunch. I had nothing to do, so I did it. And then the first person came back, and I gave him my draft and the other one, although I didn't say I did it. And he read them both. He said, this one's perfect, send it out. So they sent out the one I did, right? So it's like there could be hidden talent gems right under your nose, but you don't give them the time of day. You don't give them a chance to shine. And even if it was bad, they might have said, you know what, this is not terrible. Let's groom you. You have the possibility to do this. So they didn't, and I never got credit, and no one ever knew who I did it, except for, I knew when I saw it in print. But that's the kind of example of what's right in front of you. And are you nurturing talent, or are you just disposing of people because they can't do the job perfectly right now? So it's a lost opportunity in a lot of ways. But I think that's just the speed at which the world is racing right now.
How much of that do you think, I'm sorry, just one last bit on this. How much do you think of that is that the world is racing too fast or changing too fast versus, in my mind, if you're the leader of an organization, isn't kind of your role to be 6 or 12 or 18 months down the line, to have that vision and to be preparing your workforce for that?
Yeah, you should be, but I don't see that happening because, like you said, there's stockholders to please, there's numbers to hit, and they don't have the luxury of saying, it's like a sports team, right? Do you just lose and try to get some draft picks and slowly build your team back up, or do you trade for the highest price players and pay the big bucks for the free agents? Some organizations are like, we need to win now, and others are like, we're fine if we lose the next couple of years because we're building a future, right? So part of it is like, as a strategic approach from a leadership perspective for your organization, which mentality do you have? Are you building to the future? Slow and steady wins the race, or it's like we need to win quarterly and out with the old and with the new, and we'll just take our chances with that. So there's, I think that varies by leader to leader and organization to organization. But there's so much pressure to produce now that I think there's not that luxury that people used to have where, you say, all right, let's slowly build this thing. That's my.
And then you have the individuals, who really maybe have a desire to be working over there or doing something different or even elsewhere. And there's a reticence to express that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering what kind of systematic mechanisms could be in the future to help reveal it within the current workplace without feeling nervous about jeopardizing your current role to the current manager who may want to keep you in that spot.
Yeah.
How does that internal flame ignite into other areas.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I did a team building offsite for an organization, a pharmaceuticals company, where I took the whole group, 20 people, through my passion skill matrix. So first of all, you have to create an environment of trust and psychological safety where people are willing to be vulnerable, open, honest, leave your titles outside the door, and let's just talk as people, as humans, right? Putting the humanity back into human resources. So everyone filled out their passion skill matrix. We put them all up on the wall, no criticism, no judgment, where people said, I think I'm good at this. I think I'm terrible at this. I love this. I hate this. And what came out of that is we created a team passion skill matrix where everyone got a different color marker. So I always have my different colored markers with me. And then we created one master one for the whole department. So like, let's say, Kurt, you have in your growth zone something you want to learn, and Robert, you have something in your default zone, something you're good at, but you're sick of. Maybe you mentor Kurt for the next 3 months, pass that workload along to him. That frees you up to work on something that's in your growth zone, and then you each can turn that growth zone into your sweet spot over time. But until you have those open, honest, candid conversations, we think, Robert, oh, you must love what you do because you're so good at it. And you're like, I hate it and I'm sick of it. Maybe I used to like it, but I'm tired of it. And Kurt, you may be doing something and have this aspiration to be better at something, but you're not given an opportunity, right? So until you have those conversations, you don't know what's in someone's head, because people are not mind readers. That's one of my catchphrases. Like, I can't, visually thinking, read into your mind. So unless you express what is going on, I don't know. So, but that's a perfect example of how, by finding out what makes people tick, where their passions lie and what their aspirations are, then you could set them up for success. Because sometimes Jim Collins wrote in Good to Great, get the right people on the bus, but also get them in the right seats on the bus, right? Or get them off. So you could be a great person, but in the wrong seat. And
so it's funny you talk about all of that in your skills matrix. You refer to the failure zone and how can you take the list of things that you don't want to be involved with and reframe yourself so you can get to the sweet spot. I talk about my kids a lot, but my daughter was not sure what to do for a major in college. So I got the list of 150 majors. And I said, cross out everything you hate, just from your high school experience, science, engineering. And she ended up with a list of things that she didn't know about, but she didn't hate them. Yeah. So it was fairly neutral, but it led to her going to school for business and marketing and supply chain. And now that's what she's doing. It kind of flowed. She's very happy in her environment.
That reminds me of how you carve a sculpture of an elephant. You take a gigantic block of clay and then you cut away everything that doesn't look like an elephant, and then you end up with
exactly.
So, but you do, because the world is complex, and part of what a coach does, and that's what you were doing in that context, is coaching your daughter, is eliminate the complexity by simplifying. So you may not, so you have a list of 300, but you narrow it down to like 30 things. And what you find in life is that things that you think you would like, you don't. Like my job at LiquidNet, working with Jeff Schwartzman, I almost didn't take that job because I had no interest in working in financial services or technology, but that company had such an amazing culture and I trusted Jeff. So I took that job. He was my boss. And it was I worked there full time for 3 years. It was one of the greatest work experiences I've had in my life. But I almost didn't take it because I'm not a financial services technology person, but it was the culture that set me up for success and allowed me to grow. And without that, I probably wouldn't have written the book. I wouldn't be teaching at NYU and Columbia. So that led to so many other things, and I almost turned it down. So you just never know sometimes.
So I think, it's a pretty, I think we've covered pretty well the sort of challenges, but you as somebody who's actually out there working with leaders and giving them ways to approach these challenges differently, what does the next year or two, what does the post-COVID world look like for you? How are things going to change in your mind, or what are you working towards with these leaders to get things to change how they need to?
Yeah, well, the foundation of all my work is management training, leadership development, and executive coaching. So the foundations have not changed. The circumstances have changed. So I'm basically framing everything around managing and leading in a COVID and post-COVID world. So how do you, like one of the principles of management is, I think it was Peter Drucker's MBWA, managing by walking around. right? They say, or the 1 minute manager principle, spend 1 minute with each person, right? You can't do that if you're not in the office together, right? You can't just stop by someone's desk and say, Robert, how's your day going? Anything I can help you with, right? So as a manager, say people are working from home, if I check in too often, I'm micromanaging or babysitting. If I don't do it enough, the person may feel abandoned and become disengaged. And so how do you have trust and empowerment, ownership and accountability in a virtual world where part of you, let's say you're managing a hybrid team where some people are home, some people are remote, some people, so that's what I'm working with people on now is how do you navigate these new realities? Everything from time management to influencing to, I talk about 3 V's, visibility, voice, and value, right? How visibility is about, are you seen and how are you seen? Voice is, are you heard and how are you heard? And value is about what contribution are you making? If you're working from home, how do you become visible? How do you get heard and how do you get seen in terms of your contributions if you're not in person, you're not physically around people. You can't walk over to your boss and say, hey, look, I just did this today. Look at this, right? So those are some of the challenges for managers and for employees is how do you grow your career? How do you navigate? How do you deal with clients? How do you attend meetings? Executive presence on a Zoom call, right? How are you coming across? I have a workshop called CAP, Confidence, Assertiveness, and Presence. How are you exhibiting those behaviors? So it really is, some things have not changed and are still fundamental. Some things are right now just temporary and other things are changed forever. Like we're not going to go back. The post-COVID world will not look like the pre-COVID world. So many things have changed. The genie's out of the bottle, train's left the station, whatever metaphor you want to use. So my job is to help people kind of figure that out and navigate that, both for managers and for employees, because there's so much uncertainty and confusion and lack of confidence. And to be honest, no one has all the answers, right? So part of it is being flexible and agile and figuring it out as we go along, but collaborating together. But I think the human side of leadership is more important than ever, right? So it's not just about manage, there's a saying, manage the process, lead the people. So you need to give people the R&R, not rest and relaxation, although that's important, R&R, resources and roadblocks. Give people the resources they need to do their jobs, remove the roadblocks that stand in their way. Those are the manager's job. And the leader's job is to set the person up for success, really connect with the human being, not the role, but the person, the human being in the role, and help them be as successful as possible. So that's my job right now, is to help leaders to think through those things and come up with new approaches.
I think that flexibility too. I mean, I'd love to see leaders go back to saying, we have a workforce, how can we understand their motivations and how can we prepare them for where we need them to be 6-12 months down the road? And really, because security, I think, is going to become a much bigger motivator for people after this, right? Being secure in your job, being secure in your life. And so I think that could go a long way towards that. So I hope we get there.
Yeah. And also in terms of diversity, inclusion, belonging, equity, we need to realize that, everyone sees the world, again, going back to visual thinking, everyone sees the world through a different lens, right? The rainbow eye on the cover of my book, the rainbow represents diversity and innovation and creativity. And one of my top concepts is called flipping the eye. Thank you, Robert, for holding that up. And flipping the eye is about turning that eye 2 ways. One, turning it on yourself and looking inwardly at your biases, assumptions, prejudices, and questioning the lens through which you view the world, but also the realization that other people do not see the world in the same way as you do. Can you see it through the perspective of your employees to help them be successful? Because the most important responsibility of a leader is to basically create the next generation of leaders and realize that it's not about you, it's about them and setting other people up for success. But that's, again, part of seeing the world in a whole new way, because we are living in a new world now. The post-COVID world is a different world than we were living in a year ago.
I'm going to just jump in quickly, Robert. I think that the dance class downstairs is about to kick into high gear here in a few minutes.
That's a good cue.
I just wanted to take a moment. Yeah, I wanted to take one moment now just to, Todd, I mean, this is Robert and I did a quick run through first to kind of test this out. You're our first guest, Enrique Rubio, who I know from Hacking HR. He's coming on a couple of weeks. And so I think this is really exciting. So I sincerely appreciate you taking the time. And Robert, I'm going to let you play it out with Todd here because I think the volume's going to start to kick up a little bit here in a minute. So.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Enrique is a good friend of mine. I'm very involved. In fact, I'll be speaking on the Hacking HR, one of the panels in March.
Oh, cool. I just got my Hacking HR membership. So
Great.
I'm connected in, and I think, we'll chat when we talk with him about how, we can support him and hopefully get some support back as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I connected with Enrique when he first started Hacking HR because Matt and I were working on Skill Divvy. So he's a tornado, and I think he's going to do great things.
Yeah, talk about a visual leader. I mean, he had this vision for a whole new world of the integration of HR and technology, and he created this movement basically single-handedly, and he got all of us on board with him, and it's very exciting. He's just, people will be writing books about him one of these days.
Yep. Well, nobody will be writing books about me, but I appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Kurt. I'm sure they will. So write your own book then. Write your own book.
So I guess to wrap, our theme is who's there? And the question mark is who's in me, and from the employer, who do they have? The exclamation point is, aha, that's who I am, and that's what I'm working toward. And from the employer's perspective is, oh, look what we've got. Let's make advantage of it. And so as I think about my own discussion guide, and what I'm pursuing is around what I've termed as my me. And I've become more of an independent agent to think about what's going to work for me. But at the same time, I'm so excited about how you've shared the importance of leadership, understanding who the me's are that they have working in an environment. In fact, even Walmart last year rolled out a theme on me, it's all about you. And I was really startled by that with the perspective they're trying to reorient the relationship with their people. And certainly the hundreds of thousands that work for Walmart may be aspiring for other things internally at Walmart or even beyond. So, Todd, we thank you for your perspectives and know that we look forward to talking again one day.
Thanks, Robert. It was a pleasure talking to you.